Hello, my friends. Thank you for joining me again. I am Troy Miller, and with my guest, Kiera Miller. We are both with Spicy Jello and F64 Live, and tonight we are representing IEPPV. This is content that we started several months ago when quarantine happened. We decided we need to continue to pour content out into the community, and we were doing it weekly. Now we're doing it bi-monthly, which is every other week. So I appreciate Kiera for putting up with another one of these. She's right down the hall, so she gets to hear me talk about all this stuff all the time. Before I forget, next program, which will be, I believe it's on the 19th, we're going to be talking infrared. Now, I don't have a guest yet, but we're going to talk infrared, so it's going to be pretty cool. Infrared is definitely one of my favorites. Kiera, what are we going to talk about tonight? What is on the agenda?
We are going to talk about building websites. Really just the bare bones of what a website is, what makes a good website, why it's important to have one in the first place,
Right.
and just sort of the first steps of how to dip your toes into sort of building a web presence for yourself.
Yeah, and you and I talk about this kind of stuff all the time, is really about branding and what makes us look good on the site and what kind of images do we need and how many images. And because really, everybody's website can be a little bit different, but for me, I see my website as a gallery, right?
Hmm.
But a website could be a point of sale, like Pack Artist, that could be a point of sale. So those are things to consider too. So, Kira, I should know this, but what's the latest project you're working on?
Gosh, I'm actually working on a couple right now. So I am working on really just a lot of website projects, actually. I found that a lot of my clients that I've either worked with in the past on like branding or we've always talked about doing their website, now is when they all want to do them, which is great for me. But it's been pretty busy. So I'm working on a website for architecture photography. And then I have like a couple blog websites that I'm working on, currently redesigning the Premier Artist Collection website. So that
Oh,
is underway.
yeah, that's right. There's so
Yeah.
many. So, what is your least favorite part of building websites?
Oh
Like,
gosh.
what do you hate the most about them?
Um, I I really hate dealing with hosting. I find that, I have either my clients are on one side or the other. Like they either don't have hosting yet and they're like brand new to it, and that actually ends up being really simple. Or I end up working with somebody who has a host, like they have a website already, but they had their hosting company from like 12 years ago and that host doesn't exist anymore. So there's a lot of like finding out who owns the website, how do I get in contact with them to like access the back end. It's messy. It's so messy.
I thought you were going to say that migrating emails is the worst
Oh,
part of building.
there's that. But now I know how to do it, kind of. After I had sort of a I don't want to call it a nightmare project because I put it on myself, but
Yeah.
I am.
We will dive into more of this stuff in detail. But the one thing I think that is really important for everybody to understand is that websites require care and feeding. They're not simply, oh hey, I paid somebody build my website and now it's gonna work beautifully for the next few years.
Mhm.
They have constant maintenance updates. You have to back them up. If you don't do the maintenance updates, you can be susceptible to viruses and spam in your blogs, especially with WordPress, because WordPress is a blog.
Yeah, so all of that can kind of depend on what CMS or content management system you end up working with. So there's a lot to choose from. So there's WordPress, which you mentioned, which I tend to work in 90% of the time. And then there are also places like Squarespace and Wix. And Squarespace and Wix, I don't really know what the update process looks like for them. I know that for Squarespace, like you end up paying, a monthly or an annual fee because they'll do hosting for you as well. So they probably handle a lot of that on the back end. However, with WordPress, one of the reasons I love it is because it's an open source platform, which basically means that there are developers all over the world that are contributing to the code and the development. So WordPress is always super up to date. It's actually usually ahead of the curve.
Right.
I think something like 40% of websites now are built on WordPress. So when it comes to like updates, like you mentioned, because WordPress is open source, it means that there's always new stuff coming out, which means it needs to be updated. And when you don't
Right.
update it, that's where it gets vulnerable.
Yeah, and I was going to say like the statistics from several years ago was something like 40% of all the websites were run on a WordPress platform, and then out of those 40%, some 80% of those were mobile devices and specifically iPhones.
Yeah.
So, and what is it called? And I'm asking because I can't remember. When a website is good both on a like a laptop, an iPad, a phone. What is that
Yeah.
called?
It's called responsiveness.
Responsive.
So yeah.
Yes.
So basically, what that means is you want your website layout and design to be able to respond to any and all screen sizes. So you want it to look great on your massive desktop as well as on your phone. So
Right. Right. And that's, I know that's a challenge for a lot of people because we go to some websites. IEPPV is very responsive, by the way. IEPPV.com, if you go there on your mobile device. And what happens is your menus reorganize and they line up really nice on a mobile device. And sometimes you've got to do some tweaking in the back end to get there. So when you're building a site, are these things that you take into consideration? How you're going to organize the content on that site, from galleries to forms and things like that? Are you always thinking about mobile?
yeah, absolutely. Actually, design, just sort of in the years that I've been doing design, so we'll say starting like 2012-ish, designers and web designers have really shifted away from desktop first focused design to mobile first. So instead of designing a website and only designing it for the desktop where you can kind of go crazy and make things look really cool, the focus has now turned to how to make it look just as cool on a mobile device. And sometimes making sacrifices for your desktop to make sure that it looks good on a phone. So I found some statistic the other day that said that since 2017, mobile devices have generated about 50% of global web traffic, and that's been consistent up until 2020.
That's
Um,
that's huge. So when you go to a website that you've got to zoom in to click on a menu to go, no, that's
yeah.
that's 50% of your users are going to be like, "Psh, I'm out."
Hmm.
And there's really no need for that anymore, right? I mean, maybe 5 years ago, the technology to organize and the back end for mobile wasn't as fluid as it is today, but today there's kind of no reason everything should work on a mobile or an
Definitely.
iPad.
Hmm.
Well, we got some good questions in there. Arthur, I see you got some questions in there. We'll hit those here in a little bit. I appreciate that. If anybody has any questions, please make sure that you put them in the Q&A because I want to make sure that we're doing this for you. Kiera and I can talk anytime, but I want to make sure we get this information out there for you guys as well. So let's just go back to like the original design, or the beginning design of websites. Like, why does it matter? Why does it matter that I have a good website layout?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, everybody expects you to have a website, first of all. Especially now, like when networking in person isn't really something that's feasible. If somebody finds out about your work on Instagram and they want to know more, they're expecting to go to a website and find more information. So that's, just the main reason that it's important to have one in the first place. Having something that is well designed, on the other hand, takes an extra step. And it's kind of like having a business card that is really well designed. Like I've handed out business cards before, and I've had people say like, "Oh wow, this paper is really nice," and that ends up sticking in their mind, just like a nicely designed website does. So it's sort of like a digital handshake. It's the first impression for your work. And then the other part too is that websites should really be a reflection of your business, as opposed to having all of your stuff focused on like Instagram or Facebook. you don't actually own that content anymore when you upload it to those websites. So it's cool
Right.
to share your stuff there. It's cool to have people discover you there. But your website should really be a hub of where all of your info is, where all of your like the rest of your portfolio work is. So
Right. I'm going through a couple of the websites. Like this is F-Stop Dave, which is a friend of ours that we just put together. So it gives you a sense of what somebody is doing with that. Because like you said, it's a virtual handshake, right? It's a gallery. Now, you can certainly use a website for e-commerce, right? For checking
mhm.
out, for buying products, but your design is equally as important with that there. So if somebody's going to get ready to build a website, or let's say they want to redesign their website, where do they start? Like, what should they start thinking about in their heads before they go and hire somebody like you to redesign it, so that they can go to the table prepared?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And it kind of falls into sort of the same set of steps as like what we talked about when it comes to logo design in the other webinar that we did. It's important to know what the purpose of your website is going to be. So, like you mentioned, e-commerce. Um, I've had a lot of clients that are photographers specifically come to me and say, I have a Zenfolio website, or I have a website hosted on like SmugMug where I thought I was going to sell images, and I never did. And now I want to get away from that. And now I just want a portfolio. And that not sort of knowing what your goal is and how it's going to be feasible can end up costing you a lot of money up front because you end up going a route that you're just not sure if you want to use.
Right.
And the other part too is to sort of think ahead for your content. So, how many, like, I'm just going to speak in photography specifically. But let's say you're a photographer like David Schulman, the website that you showed that does events and lifestyle stuff, maybe even weddings. You want to think about those categories beforehand. And like with any portfolio, I think in any industry, it's important to show the work that you want to be hired for. So in my case, on my portfolio, I show branding work and I show website work. I don't show, me building emails or doing social media marketing because that's not what I specialize in and that's not what I'm hoping to get hired for necessarily. So when thinking about your website, think about what you want to showcase. Sort of treat it maybe as though you were hosting an in-person exhibition, and what are the special pieces that you want to show.
Yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Let me get my camera back to you. I was showing David Levy's website and a little bit of your website. Why were we doing that?
His
Because
logo, yeah.
yeah, his logo. Yeah, it's really important. Like for me, because as a wedding photographer, I really only want to use that as a gallery. But with F64, I want to be able to share a lot more content. So I have to think about what is the funnel for somebody hitting my website? Where do I want them to go? Do I want them to be able to purchase something? Do I want them to be able to check out IEPPV as the same way many of you guys got here through IEPPV's website, which is, it's this funnel. Like when you hit the page, can you find what you're looking for? So would you suggest that before somebody builds a website that they do some research, maybe create a mood board, maybe make a list of some points that are really important to them, like here's my A priority list and my B priority list. Like here's things I hope it would do and things I would kind of like it to do.
Yeah, I mean that's always good stuff to have just sort of up front. Like you mentioned, a mood board that can be really cool if you're looking to hire somebody to help you with a design. Coming to the table with all of that is really nice, because not only does it sort of show the type of design that you're interested in, it also gives them a sense of what kind of functionality that you want to have. So, like I do with all my branding clients, I will ask a million questions when helping somebody build a website. Like, what do you want it to do? Who are you trying to speak to? Like, who is your audience? And then really digging into what kind of content you're going to put up front. So, yeah, doing a lot of research on your own and just sort of initially before even purchasing hosting or purchasing your domain or hiring someone,
Right.
it saves a lot of time when it comes to the design.
So let's jump into kind of the ugly side of websites, and that's the back end, that's the hosting, that's the domain names, and then the registrars and all that stuff that I know because you and I do my own hosting, and I know that you and I have had to spend many, many hours explaining to somebody like, well, you don't actually own your website because you hired somebody.
Hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that scenario, how that goes down, and kind of a little warning story about things that we need to pay attention to.
Yeah. So if I'm speaking to somebody that has no website, like they're literally starting from scratch, there's two key pieces that they need to do before we can work together. And first, that's purchasing a domain name, which I think is kind of the fun part because you're figuring out what you want it to be called. You have a name in your mind, and then you look it up, and it's taken. So you gotta come
Yeah.
up with something else. Um, Typically, just sort of for background information for anybody that hasn't done that before, you can typically purchase domains through websites that also include hosting, but like GoDaddy is the most popular one people tend to use for their
Yep.
URLs. So that's sort of the fun part of the messy part. Um, but what I find is that even if somebody has a domain, like you can't really do anything with that. The part that I dislike the most is the hosting, which is sort of the second part and really the supplemental, most, I would say, actually the most important part of the website, and is where a lot of problems can come up when it comes to support or people, quote unquote, not owning their websites anymore. So essentially, the way I like to describe hosting to people, and I'm not necessarily, an expert, but I describe it as you're purchasing real estate on the web. So you have to put all of your content, someone has to sort of hold that content on a server. They have to, you have to basically, you're paying for space and storage to upload your stuff to a website. So where that can get messy is if you are choosing a host that you don't have a lot of research put into, so you don't actually know what you're paying for, you don't know how much space you're getting. Maybe you can't contact their customer support, which I've seen happen. That ends up being a really difficult host to work with later. And the cases where you would need to work with one later are, let's say, your PHP needs upgrading, which is something that a couple of my clients are going through right now. It's just part of owning a website, and that stuff gets upgraded through a host. And if they ask me, like, hey, can you upgrade it for me? I have to contact their host, and sometimes I can't get a hold of them.
So,
Um,
so to kind of simplify your domain name, you buy your domain name. That's usually, we'll call it $10 to $15 a year. You buy the domain name, and then hosting can cost you anywhere from $8 a month to $100 a month, depending on the speed that you want. The problems that you're referring to are when people go and they hire somebody to build a website. That person hosts it where they don't know where it's at. They set up the accounts under usually the developer's name. The developer has the the username and passwords, and you've always called Chuck to upgrade your website. Well, Chuck isn't your friend anymore, or he's out of business, and you realize, like, oh my gosh, everything is registered under his name. You never really owned your website. You paid him. So
right.
make sure that you have your logins for your domain name that you purchased. You have the logins, the admin level logins for the hosting company, so that you can go in and you can take control.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's hit some of our questions because it's kind of in that area, and we're going to talk a lot about some of the geeky back end stuff because I really want to make sure that you guys go away from this with a really good foundation of, okay, I know what I need to own, I know how it works, I don't want to do it, but now I know what's out there. So Arthur asks, he says, hello Arthur. Any tips to a newbie to get more acquainted with WordPress.org authoring? I use Name Hero. So I looked up Name Hero. I wasn't used to that. I think Name Hero is a hosting platform.
Okay.
And this would be good for us to mention that there is a difference between WordPress.org and hosting there and a WordPress website as a platform.
Right. I'm actually quickly refreshing myself on the difference between the two because there is there is a very distinct difference. One is going to be free and it's going to be hosted by WordPress, so it's just like typing in a blog name and it's, blog name.wordpress, whatever. Um, okay, let me
Yeah, because
just set up a search on the
WordPress.org
chat.
is sort of like a blog spot, or it's a pre-built web interface. You can upload content, but one of the other sides is WordPress as a platform, which gives you a lot more flexibility, a lot more power. It gives you a backend admin. You host the data on your own server. WordPress.org is hosted by WordPress. It's okay.
Well, just to correct, because there's WordPress.com and WordPress.org. WordPress.org is actually the one that you want. It's not
Oh,
hosted through
see,
WordPress.
that's why you're here.
So can you rephrase the question one more time?
Yeah. Any tips to a newbie to get more acquainted with WordPress.org
Mhm.
authoring? I use Name Hero.
Hmm. I don't know if I've actually heard the term WordPress.org authoring.
Probably, I'm assuming that would be like hosting WordPress on there with Name Hero.
Okay. Well, one of the things to consider when it comes to hosting is think about the content that you want to have on your website in the first place. I would say, I don't know if you're looking to build like a portfolio or a gallery, but most photographers or people that are just building a portfolio, they don't need a ton of space, especially if you're being very careful about how large your images are when you upload them. Um, but I would say, look at whatever host you're going to go with. Look at their basic plans. Typically, you can start with a basic plan and then you can upgrade later. So if you look at the basic plan and you say like, okay, this all looks good, you can start with that and then upgrade later. And be sure to ask your host a lot of questions. The reason I can't give a straightforward answer here is because I'm not familiar with the host. They will know more about their services than I do. So plus it's also a really good opportunity for you to figure out whether or not they have a good support system. So definitely ask them a lot of questions. Maybe start with the basic plan, see how that goes. And then if you feel like you need to upgrade, that's a totally okay thing to do.
Yeah, and upgrading when it comes to hosting, there's a lot of varieties of hosting, and it really comes down to speed. So, and I won't get into the really the back end of it, but it has to do with like how much RAM you have on your server. Is it a shared server? Is it a dedicated server? So it really comes down to things like speed and performance. So depending on what kind of site you have, if you have a lot of traffic, you may want a dedicated server that's gonna provide you basically with more bandwidth. On the server side. Start with the basic. You can always upgrade. I'm going to jump to Loy's question. And Arthur, I know you have another question in here, but we'll get to that. Loy is asking, how hard is it to switch from one host to another? Say from SmugMug to WordPress.
So that's sort of a two-part question. So typically going from one host to another can be fairly simple. But when we're talking about hosting companies, we're talking about so when I say host, I mean a company that is not building a website for you. Like in my experience, SmugMug, when you purchase hosting through them, you're actually also purchasing a web presence. Like they build out a website for you, you have a little domain, like you're good to go. So switching from a regular host, like let's say Bluehost or GoDaddy, to one of their equivalents can be fairly simple, and that's a process that usually either host can help you do from one to another. If you're looking to switch from a place like SmugMug or Zenfolio to WordPress, it's a little bit more complicated because the moment you move away from SmugMug is the moment you lose, chances are you lose your domain name unless you've purchased that separately, but you're for sure going to lose your hosting. And when you lose hosting through companies like that, you also lose the website. So you'll lose your content because it's all hosted through them, or it's sort of in their back end. It's part of the website they build for you. So what I've done for many clients that sort of switch from those services is I recommend them to download all their content, do a backup if they can.
Yep.
And then when you do find a hosting company that is only going to provide hosting, that is where you're sort of going to start from the ground up. So it's not a super clean switch from like a SmugMug to a WordPress, but it's definitely possible. And oftentimes that's why I get hired to do these sites, because I kind of understand how it works, because it can be a daunting process to do by yourself.
Yeah, unfortunately, Loy, and she says, "Holy cow!" Yeah, I can see the. We know, Loy. Loy, I'm sorry. Go top off your whiskey. Um, and this is a cautionary tale for anybody looking, because it seems like, oh, I'm going to go to SmugMug, or I'm going to go to, Zenfolio or whatever, and I'm just going to start this website. It seems so good, and they use the same terms website, but it's really not the same level. For example, if you had a WordPress website, uh, that's you could transfer that in moments from one host to another, not a problem. You can back up that data. You can get a different developer, you can get a different web designer, and they can all work on that. That's because it's foundational and it's universal. But SmugMug and what are some of the other ones? There's Shopify. You
Zenfo
can,
Shopify, you can have basically you can have them set up a website for you. You just connect whatever domain name third party that you have. But yeah, that's another instance where the moment you turn off your Shopify account, your website's gone.
Wix and Squarespace are the same way. Their content is mostly proprietary. The way that they host them on their servers, it's not easy. And maybe they do have the ability to migrate over, but mostly not. So be very careful when you set that up. I'm sorry, Loy. I wish it was an easier answer for you, um, but fix it now before it gets bad. One of the other things that I think is important to note is that I see a lot of emails from people, like fstopdave@gmail.com. That does not look professional, right? And when you have your own website, you can have your own email address, and it should be Dave at fstop. What is it?
Hmm.
fstopdave.com, whatever it is, .com. And that definitely looks good. So we have another question from Arthur. I wanted to jump into this. Looking at our list, there's lots of stuff. Second question, he says, tips on an online store.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's a big topic, but I'll sort of give like really quick references. First, it kind of depends on what you're selling. Let's say you're going to sell your photographs. You have a couple options. So when it comes to working with WordPress specifically, there is a plugin called WooCommerce. It's very popular. A lot of people love it and use it. The basics of it are free, but you can sort of add purchased on plugins for that. Um, WooCommerce is going to be something that requires a lot of setup and a lot of time on your end or on the developer's end. There's a lot of nitty gritty to it. Typically, what I tend to recommend, and I'm actually working on a photographer's website right now that's going to use this, is you can integrate Shopify with WordPress, and you do that through a plugin. So you purchase a plugin called, yeah, so that's WooCommerce.
Yep.
Um, for Shopify, there's going to be two components you need. You're going to need an account through Shopify called Shopify Lite. And basically what that is you're just paying Shopify to put products into their system, and that will handle all of the like the shopping cart and the credit card information. Super clean, it's super nice. And then to connect that account to WordPress, there's a plugin called WP Shopify. So the plugin is going to communicate from Shopify to WordPress. And essentially what that means is that you can have all your products shown on WordPress. And then anything in terms of like the shopping cart area is going to be handled by Shopify, which personally I like that option because you're not responsible for making sure that your site is tip top secure to take credit cards, because all that's happening through Shopify, and you get security and protection through that. So there are a lot of other options, but I would say those are my two favorites.
And if anybody's rolling their eyes about how complicated that sounds, that's why I have a Kiera. I it some people enjoy diving into the admin panel and seeing what all that stuff looks like. And Kiera, I know that you and I didn't talk about this, but if you have a site that you could pull up and show what the back end of WordPress looks like, That would be really cool. You do like
Yeah.
Spicy Jello or F64 Live. It doesn't have to be immediately, but that's where hiring a good designer is really going to be money well spent because um, WordPress is a basic platform. And when you install WordPress from your control panel, once you've got your hosting paid for, it's a blank slate. It's boring. It looks like nothing. You've got to be a little creative and you've got to be able to fill that. But the power about WordPress is because it's an open source platform is that there's hundreds of plugins. And those plugins do things like what Kiera is mentioning here is shopping carts, galleries. You can bring in things like Facebook streams, Twitter streams, like all those things are plugins that run in the background. But they all interact with each other and they all have to be configured and they all have to be updated and they all have to be maintained. And this is where, you've got to really be on your site. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of info in setting up a shopping cart. But anything that you want to do in WordPress, you can pretty much do. You can pretty much do in WordPress. So, Kiera, are you ready? You want to show us what the back end looks like?
Yeah, I can. I'll actually show you the back end of Dave's website. I hope he doesn't mind.
We're gonna show Dave. See, that's the thing. When you're a friend of ours, we get to use your stuff.
Well, and
And then
I just finished his website a couple months ago, so it's fresh in my brain. All right, so it doesn't look like anything right now because we're in the dashboard. But essentially what you can do here is you can sort of see all your statistics. You can see what updates you have. And Dave, you have a couple updates that need to be done. But essentially what you can do here in the back end is WordPress has a lot of flexibility in a lot of different areas. They started as a blog platform, so that's why you see stuff like posts and media and that kind of thing. So what kind of stuff were you hoping to go over and to see?
let's just look at one of the basic configurations. Like we have a question from Arthur, says any cool website templates for photographers. Maybe show where the templates live, and then we can talk a little bit about where you get a template, and then just how you might make a post or how you might, add images to a gallery, just to show what all that looks like, because it can be it's a lot.
Yeah. So when it comes to templates specifically, I'll show you just where they live in WordPress for now. So if you go over to Appearance, and then Themes, you guys will get to see what Dave is running on. So Dave is running on Bridge, Bridge is one of my favorite themes for WordPress. And that's because it is so flexible. So I have built most of my websites using this theme, and you will see if you ever look at my portfolio, none of them look the same. So that's one of the things that's nice about WordPress too, is you can just sort of build from the ground up.
Where would somebody find a theme if they want to go look at a theme?
Yeah, so it's best to find your themes outside of the WordPress backend, just because you're going to get a lot more variety. So I use a website called Theme Forest. Now there's a lot going on here, and there's a lot to consider when looking at themes. So I'm just going to show you guys the Bridge theme. I could spell.
And thank you, Mark, for your questions. I know that you've got a few in there, and I'm not ignoring you. I'm just sort of waiting for the right opportunity.
So here is just a typical theme description page in Theme Forest. And I just want to go over a couple of the things that it's really important to keep in mind when you choose themes, because I have certainly chosen themes that I was not happy with after I bought them. So hopefully I can spare anyone from that mistake. What's nice is you can often do a live preview of these websites. Some of them are going to be exactly like what you demo is what you're going to get. They're not going to have a lot of options, but if that's not something you want to play with, then maybe that's a good option for you. For me as a designer, I want as much flexibility as possible. So that's why I dive into live previews. I see what options are available. So that's something to keep in mind. If we scroll down and we look just sort of at the author information, this is really good stuff to know too. So just by looking at this, I can see that one, their theme is really popular. And that's because it is so flexible. So it's nice to see that they have a lot of sales. And this is probably the most important part of choosing a theme, at least through Theme Forest, is I can see that the theme itself was created in 2014, which is actually as long as I've been using it. But they last updated it 4 days ago, which is amazing because that means that the developer of this theme is keeping all of the plugins that are part of this theme up to date. They're making sure that your website can do what all other websites can do, as opposed to like 5 years ago. And then just when we talked about updates through WordPress earlier and making sure that we do that so that it's secure, if your theme is out of date, that's usually the first thing that's vulnerable.
Right.
Um,
That get hacked and you become a spam. Yeah, your site is
yeah,
delivering spam
and
and
if your theme developer isn't updating your theme, you're kind of at a loss. So I've worked with themes that I thought were really great when I chose them, and then a month later they stopped updating it, and then I had to tell my client or for my own site like, okay, and now I need a new theme because I can't leave my site vulnerable. So
yep.
um, that's
Themes are
really
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so that's probably one of the most important things I would recommend checking.
And themes are just a foundation, right? They can be tuned and tweaked, so what you see isn't doesn't have to only be that way. You kind of mentioned that earlier, but
Yeah, so there are definitely limitations when it comes to choosing a theme. Like I said, if you go through the demo and you sort of go through like their documentation is really cool to see. And you notice that there's like not an area to change the color. I mean, there usually is, but let's say there isn't. Um, there is a workaround. So if you're somebody who knows CSS styling, you can certainly use CSS and WordPress really easily to make those updates. But if you're somebody that's just sort of building the site on your own and you just want to work with a theme that's really simple and you don't know CSS, then expect limitations. But if you go with a theme like this one that I'm showing you, those options of making those adjustments, there are going to be vast opportunity to kind of do what you want.
right, right. Mark, we're gonna do a couple questions, and you can show us some more stuff in here as we're kind of diving through this because it'd be fun to see like how you add images to a gallery, for example. I got to whittle away at Mark's questions. Mark has many questions. One of them is, have you been checking out the new Google Web Stories
I have
theme?
not. No, I haven't.
Yeah, that seems like a something worth diving into. I did a little, I looked it up, and it says a web story is a visual storytelling format in Google search results that immerses the user in a tap through full screen experience.
Hmm, that's cool. No, I haven't used that yet. I haven't dove into that, but I certainly will. Thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, something worth looking at. Yeah, so how would we get images in there? And do you need a plugin to host images on your website?
So yes and no. Again, depending on your theme, it's important to see what the capabilities are. So like Bridge, for example, it already comes with a lot of options for showing images and creating image galleries, and I have used those theme options before. Within the last year or so, though, I've sort of shifted away from using the basic theme options for galleries, and I switched to a pro plugin called Next Gen Gallery. It's made by Imagely. So what you're seeing on my screen now is just an example of what the Next Gen Gallery backend looks like. What I like about this plugin is that it makes your images, one, look amazing on phones, on your computer, but they also have an e-commerce option. So, let's say you just shot a wedding and you're asking the client to come back and choose images that they want as proofs or that they want on their wall, or they can order their own 8x10. You can do that all through this plugin. Now, David does not have any of those e-commerce options set up, so I can't really show any of that, but this plugin does have a lot of documentation if you want to dive in. But just going to quickly go over what adding a gallery looks like, what adding images look like. So if I just go to add gallery, what's nice about these plugins is that it is pretty straightforward. There's a lot of customization that I've done here that isn't going to be visible. But it's just something to keep in mind. So here's just where you would create a new gallery. So we're just going to do a gallery test. And then that's where you would add your files. I don't have any test files to upload at the moment, but just a couple notes on what uploading images for the web should look like. Make sure that your images are under a meg in file size. It's very important that, once you've got your hosting set up, once you've got your website ready to go, it does not mean that you have unlimited resources unless literally that's what you're paying your host for.
Right.
So when you are getting your images ready for the web, I usually recommend that clients, size them at 10 inches long side, keep the resolution somewhere between like 150, 200, and then make sure that the actual size of the file is under a meg, because once you start to upload a lot of images, your website can get bogged down. It can be hard to make backups because there's just so much data. So that's important to keep in mind. I would also say too that if you are building a gallery, let's say it was for a specific type of photography, keep your portfolio minimal. Keep it selective. So instead of having 50 images for your wedding gallery, try 25. See if you can narrow down to your favorite 25 images, because again, your website is you putting your best foot forward, and sort of showcasing your work. You don't want to show work that you're not proud of. And oftentimes working with clients, that's the part that they get stuck on, because they're like, oh, I'll just post everything. And really, you really want to refine your galleries and your work.
I went ahead and stopped your sharing real quick. We can always go back to that if we need to. Yeah, and I would even add to that. I would say that don't duplicate images on Instagram and your website, right? What do you think about that? Should you have unique content on your social media account versus your website?
Yeah, I think having unique content is going to be one of the reasons that people want to visit your website after going to your Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe a good example of this is, let's say you shot a wedding and you want to show one of your favorite images from that wedding. That favorite image is what you post on Instagram. Is it the best one? Maybe not. Maybe there's an even better one that you want to show. But posting that sample image on Instagram is going to give you an opportunity to invite people to go to your website to see the rest.
Right. Right. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Let's get to some more of the questions before we dive into some more of your outline. Mark Charette says, have you found a way to be able to test the impact on site speed with plugins, short of turning them on and off and comparing? It's a bit hard to decide when too much is too much.
Yeah, so when it comes to site speed specifically, I have not done any of those tests. I tend to keep my websites very minimal. Now, just looking at David's backend, I know it looks like a lot, but in retrospect, everything is there for a purpose. Having a lot of plugins with just a lot of code and a lot of bandwidth can make your sites slower. So what I recommend to clients is to, one, be very selective when choosing plugins. There's a lot of good free ones out there, but you might need 5 free ones to do what a paid plugin can do. And that paid plugin is going to be more optimized. It's going to have support, and it's just going to last you longer. If you're sort of looking at like, what plugins do I use versus not, see if any of your plugins are doing the same thing as each other, which I know seems kind of a no-brainer, but there are a lot of plugins that will do similar things to others, and they'll just reframe it a different way. So like caching plugins are really popular for people to have multiples of those, or contact form plugins. Try to choose plugins that are premium options if you can do that, if you can afford to do that. But just like do your research and only choose what you need. And if you find that you have a new plugin that's going to replace an old one, make sure that you delete the plugins from the site that you're not using anymore. That's what I find most often when I help clients who already have a WordPress site, and I go in and they've got 10 plugins they're not using. Those cause vulnerabilities and in turn can make your site work a lot slower. So hope that answers your question.
And I've got let me show you this. Anybody else wants to run their site through this? There's tons of websites. I don't know which ones are best. We would have to do a little research, but you can actually do a test on your site to see how fast it is and how it ranks compared to other sites. Now, most of the time, the speed of your site is directly related to your host, whether it's WordPress optimized, whether you have your own dedicated server like a VPS. It really comes down to what the site is hosted on. I switched from, I used to use Jaguar PC and I used to use GoDaddy, which are shared hosts, which means basically you're sharing a computer. And I was getting load times for our websites in like 10, 12 seconds. And I switched to InMotion, and it's a dedicated VPS server. It costs me, I don't know what it is, I think $1,200 a year for all of our websites. It dropped my load times down to less than 3 seconds. And so that simply has to do with the way the server's configured. So that's a good way to do that. But find yourself a good test site, and it'll actually tell you this plugin is using too much PHP resources, or too much RAM, or you don't have enough RAM, or this thing is configured, or you have too many. This is really kind of over my head. So but yeah, you can always check your sites there. Mark also asks, this is okay. One more thing. What's your take on embedded iframes? Are they bad, good, or neither?
It's hard to say definitively. I don't really think that I have an opinion either way, and here's why. It's because I don't use them often. Typically, the websites that I'm building are not video heavy, which is the case in which I see iframes being used most of the time. Um, I think it's important just to sort of think about, again, what is necessary. So if you're finding that, iframes are sort of taking up a lot of your site, and that's part of, what things are loading slow, or maybe things are just getting busy. Maybe your code is just looking really busy. Um, I think consolidating is always the best option. Again, this isn't something that I can speak to 100% because I don't work with iframes too often. But yeah, consolidation, I think in any sense of a website is really important.
And I'll hit up some of my geekier web friends, and I'll find a couple web speed test links, and I'll put them in the show notes when we post this on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, check the show notes. I should have put links in there where you can go test your site. I've got some friends. Kiera and I both have some friends that do some very, very high end back end development, and they've got the places. So we'll get those to you. Arthur's asking, have you worked with Elementor WP theme? It's a popular one on WP for ease of editing, i.e. layout, text, etc.
So I haven't worked with Elementor directly. However, I know of it and I know how to use it, and I'm familiar with it. It's a, like you mentioned in the question, it's supposed to be a very easy to use sort of WYSIWYG, or in other words, what you see is what you get kind of page builder. I've heard really great things about it. It's ranked up there as one of the best sort of WYSIWYG builders that you can use. And if you're somebody that's starting on, a website and you're planning to do it yourself, that's one of the sort of foundations that I would recommend using. And yes, there are themes that are specific for Elementor. As far as I know, Elementor is also a plugin that you can use with other theme templates. So if you're looking to just start with something that's foundational, maybe a free theme that is really solid, I think you can use Elementor in that space as well. But if you're interested in using it, definitely give it a go, because I've heard really great things about it.
What about backups? How do you back up your website? Because your website is just as important as your photography data, your photos, everything else. Just because they're sitting on a server somewhere doesn't guarantee you that it's not going to get hacked, something else. So what are some solutions for that?
Sure. So yes, backups are incredibly important because the web is somewhat unpredictable, and as things continue to change, it's important just to have that backup in your back pocket. Specifically, I use a WordPress plugin called Duplicator Pro. It's one of the better backup plugins that I've ever used just because their support system is absolutely amazing because things come up in a website that you don't expect when you're backing up. And so they're really good for that. You can do scheduled like monthly backups, weekly backups. I know IEPPV runs a ton of backups all the time just because our info is always changing. It's, if you're somebody who's kind of new to the process, investing in a plugin that is going to be easy to use and is robust when it comes to backups is so important.
Yeah, I think
Um,
we bought like a lifetime license for Duplicator Pro because
yeah,
I mean, that's just, we love that one. That one works good. And to be fair, their support is pretty darn good too. That's one of the things, is having a company that's going to be there to support you and stuff. And sometimes your host can run backups for you. They can do backups and restorations for you too. Sometimes there's additional cost for that. So let's see. We have one more question in here. You guys are getting thin on questions now. We're gonna have to go back to our notes. um, um, Anonymous attendee. I don't know who that is. I thought Annette asked this, but anyway, it says, "Do you connect next gen? Oh, say, do you connect next gen connected to Lightroom with that plugin?"
that's a good question. I'm not sure if NextGen connects to Lightroom.
I believe it
Um,
is.
It it probably does. That's not something that I have experience with just because typically I'm being hired to put in next gen into a website and to configure it with images that are already finished.
Right.
But if you're somebody that's, both the photographer and building your own website, something like that can be super, super helpful. But I think next gen they would have all the documentation, all the info on that. So sorry, I don't have that answer.
Yeah, I would just add caution to changing your images too often and putting up too many.
Hmm.
Right. I mean, it doesn't make sense to change it all the time. And so being connected to Lightroom feels like that's something that you're going to be changing images all the time. So you really kind of, what is your recommended update timeline for refreshing your images on your site? Like, how often do you think you need to do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it just depends on what what kind of work do you want to show and how is your individual photography style evolving or your business evolving over time. So, I've worked with photography clients who have had the same images up for 5 years, but their work is consistent and it looked just as good 5 years ago as it does now for their current clientele. So if you're happy
Right.
with that, keep it where it is. But if you're somebody who's, kind of more learning, you're beginning in photography and your style is changing or you're getting better, definitely update your work because like we talked about, having good work on your website is, your first impression with a client. And so if you feel that your images from 2 years ago don't reflect the work that you do now, definitely change them out.
Yeah, and this is our website, which we haven't changed some of these images for a super long time, and I think the reason is that you have no idea how long ago we took these photos. They're timeless. You don't know when we did them. We're still shooting this same kind of style of work, so it makes sense to me that I don't need to switch that up too much until it's time, right? Because
Hmm.
for me, most of my clients are new for the first time seeing my site, so those images could be 3 4 years old, like they've never seen them before. So
Right, right.
save yourself a little headache. One of the things that we didn't really kind of dive into is the part of a lot of people's website, a lot of photographers especially, is a blog.
Hmm.
And how do you combine the two? And maybe this would be a good time for you to kind of show in the back end how somebody might make a blog post and kind of just speak to that whole blog versus the gallery side of that.
Yeah. So, just to sort of give some background info on that, if you were considering WordPress, WordPress is an amazing place to integrate a blog. Like I mentioned earlier, that's kind of where they started. So, blogs are WordPress's forte, and they're built really well and they're built really intuitively. Um, when it comes to blogs, they're also really, really good for traffic content. Google is constantly indexing your site for new information. And if not only that, like, because there's a lot of SEO talk that we could do, and that's just kind of a lot to handle. But when it comes to having a blog, it's a really good place for people to stay up to date with you and giving people a reason to come back to your website. So if you're somebody that writes a blog post for every job that you work on because you want to give some background story, put that on your Instagram, put that on your Facebook, link back to your website. That's why blogs are amazing. And that's why, you can set up affiliate links. You can do all kinds of stuff with blogs. So I will go ahead and share my screen again.
Yeah, one of the things about a blog, and I am incredibly guilty of this. If you go to spicyjello.com, I've got a blog up that I think the last thing I wrote was April 2019. Um, be very, very realistic with yourself about what a blog requires. Are you really going to be able to write something, every week? And what does that content look like? The statistics on blogs is I think something like 9 or 12 posts after that. Most blogs and people just can't generate enough content. So and make sure that it's content that you can create, that you can constantly put out there. Regularity is a big part, as opposed to frequency. If you can put something out once a month, do that and do it on the regular. You don't have to blog everything, you know. Yeah,
Right.
Mark says in the comment, blogging is hard work. Best thing is to keep it evergreen. Yeah, I I wrote, I don't know, maybe, well, you could go see, I wrote a few and I really enjoyed writing them, and then I just went, it's too much. It's too much.
So in my other screen, I was just bringing over actually the back end of your website because it's easier to show a blog here because it's already been stylized.
Right, right.
Oh, here, let me bring that in to the actual screen. Yeah, so your website is built not only as a portfolio, but also as a blog. So it's a really great example of how the two can play really nicely together. Um, Building a post or even a page in WordPress works a lot like your word processor. So like Microsoft Word, it's all very straightforward. So if we go into one of these areas, and I just want to make a note that if anybody is using a new install WordPress, your backend is going to look a little bit different when it comes to pages. I'm using the Classic Editor plugin, which was the original version of the WordPress editor. Highly recommend you download that and install that. It's going to look like this, and it's going to be super easy to use.
Yeah, it gives you some different formatting tools, right? So you can create bold text and call outs and some of that.
Yeah, so just kind of looking at this blog to start with, when you do a new post, which I'll have that load in the background, um, you're going to be presented with all these options that are pretty straightforward. You're going to add a title, and then here in this white space is where you're going to add your body copy. So in my dad's example, here we have the body copy that's just sort of like a paragraph format, but then you also have options to add headings. So like a heading 1, a heading 2, different sizes. What's really important about formatting a blog post, because typically blog posts can be fairly long, is making sure that you organize it appropriately using headers, using stuff that's bold, like we can see here. Make the content digestible. Make it so that people can read it easily and they don't get lost through 3 straight paragraphs of text. The nice part here as well is that you can always add links. So you just
She's
highlight.
talking to me directly, by the way, when she's saying make it readable. I write everything in like one long paragraph, and then I send it to my editor, and she's like, "You need a thing here. You need a."
Yeah, it's well, and what's funny is a lot of people don't have experience writing for the web and writing for people's attention spans on the web. So it's important to make sure that whatever you're sharing is digestible in the easiest way possible. One of the important things about blogs that I often tell clients is you have an opportunity to use affiliate links. And there are ways to do it appropriately and there are ways to do it shady. Don't recommend being shady about it. Tell people when you're using affiliate links in your blog posts, have like an affiliate disclaimer. My dad has one on his website.
Actually, the
Um,
law.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not good to post affiliate links without telling people. So I only mention that because it's easy to link stuff and not know better. But when it comes to links, something that is so important yet so simple is to make sure that when you link to a website that is outside of your site, to make it open in a new tab or a new window. So a way to do that through WordPress is, choose text that you want to have as a link, and then go to your link options, type in the URL here, and then click the box open link in new tab. And here's why it's so important. When you're on our website and you click on a link in a blog post and that link opens in the same page where you were reading the blog post, 10 minutes later, I could be shopping on Nordstrom's website because I saw an ad and now I'm lost. And now I
Right.
can't get back to your website. Um, so by having that stuff open in a new tab, while somebody may go on a rabbit hole through YouTube on that tab, they can always go back to your website and they can always sort of start from fresh. So I always have to remind people that it's very easy to forget.
And could you just explain what an affiliate link is for somebody who might not be familiar with what that is?
Sure. So just in basic terms, an affiliate link is a link that you add on a website or in any platform. And when someone clicks on it, the website with which you're associating or you're linking to knows that whatever that person who clicked it purchases, you get a percentage of that. So let's say I have an Amazon affiliate account, which you can set up through them. And on my website, I have a blog post all about hairbrushes. If there are links to hairbrushes and you click on it, anything that you buy through Amazon, I'm pretty sure it's anything you buy through Amazon at that point is
Yeah,
part of that affiliate link
for like a certain time period.
for
Yeah.
certain for
Not
certain
every product, but very
no.
similar. Yeah.
But more in a simple sense, if I recommend ABC hairbrush and you click on my affiliate link and you buy that hairbrush, I get a percentage of what you purchased.
Right.
And there are a lot of blogs that do that because that's how people generate money as opposed to posting ads on their website or in tandem with. And it's a really great way to support your favorite bloggers or your favorite content creators. If they're clear about it and you're purchasing through an affiliate link, I think it's a really great way to support people.
Yeah.
But I
It doesn't cost anybody any more money. It's just a way that Amazon is endorsing or sponsoring somebody who referred them. And individual companies can do it as well. So you can have discount codes and promo codes for software, for hardware. So if you're affiliate and you're going to be writing a blog or doing something like that, you're going to be like, hey, I went to the Grand Canyon and here's the equipment that I used. And maybe you have an account with Really Right Stuff or an affiliate link with B&H or something. You can put that in there with that link, and then if somebody goes, well, hey, I like the tripod that Kiera was using, I want to buy that. Kiera makes $3 off your $3,000 purchase.
Mhm.
Literally, it's like that much. It's pennies. But
Right.
can you repeat the plugin, the text editor plugin that you mentioned? I took away your screen share, by the way, so we could see your face while we were chatting.
Yeah, it's I believe it's called Classic Editor. I am triple checking myself right now because I don't want to get it wrong.
And I will make sure that that is in the blog notes. I've made
Yeah.
some notes of all the links that we need to put in there. So again, if you're watching this on YouTube, those links will be there. If you're watching it now and we've gone past that, don't worry. I will make sure that those links get in there.
Yeah, so it is called Classic Editor. You can upload it and install it directly through WordPress. So if you're in WordPress and you're in the dashboard, go to plugins, and then you can just search for Classic Editor. I prefer it because it's what I'm comfortable with. WordPress, all the new installs do come with sort of a block editor. I'm not a fan of it, so I decided not to use it. So that's just my personal preference.
Yeah, yeah. And just so everybody knows, we are coming to our hour, which is fine. We can go over a little bit, not a problem. But if you have any questions, make sure you get them in there so we have plenty of time to answer them for everybody. We do have one question in the queue, Kiera. It's from Arthur. It says, not exactly web authoring related. When doing a store for photo prints, is there a service that packs and ships it for you, or do you do it yourself? If there is a service, any suggestions and any pluses or minuses? Thank you. Guys are doing great.
Thanks.
Thank you for that.
Um, so there are a couple that come to mind, but it's really going to require a lot of research just to sort of see what you need. When it comes to like the Shopify option that I suggested, you can program Shopify or really any other WooCommerce or just e-commerce plugin in general to forward your orders like to your lab. So the first place that comes to mind is like your lab is probably where you're printing them, and it's probably where they can package and ship them there. I don't know about any facilities that will purely pack and ship your products just in general. But like, for example, if you want to use like Next Gen Gallery, like the plugin that I showed, and you want people to be able to purchase prints through that, Next Gen Gallery will allow you to set up whoever your lab is through them to say, when somebody purchases an 8x10 or whatever, it's this much money and it goes directly to your lab. And then, they do sort of all of the fulfillment for you. Um, if you're brand new and starting in selling your images, I always recommend doing personal fulfillment. Like, do your own fulfillment first if you're just not sure how it works or what you need, because paying people to do fulfillment for you and storage for you can get very expensive very quickly. Um,
Yeah, and I would suggest, and Kiera and I both are heavily involved in Pack Artists, which is a fine art image sourcing and distribution into hospitality and stuff. And the one thing that I've noticed, even in my own personal work, is that if the order comes to me, I can look at that order, whatever the print size is. Oftentimes, it gives me a chance to reach out to that customer, so there's a reason for a point of contact, and then I can often help them make sure that that's the right decision. So somebody ordering off a menu system, and they say, "Oh, I want to buy a 16 by 20 of that tree, or those images from that shoot, or whatever," and then you call them and like, "Hey, I'm thanks for your order. I noticed you got a 16 by 20, and where is this going to go?" And you have that conversation. Well, you find out maybe they needed a 20 by 30. They didn't realize a 16 by 20 isn't as big as they thought, or maybe that's not really good for them, and you could help them make the proper order. So I tend to prefer the point of contact and the personal
Definitely.
one-on-one if you can. So it depends on your product, depends on your market. Miller's Professional Imaging is a lab that I use, and they actually have God, I can't think of what they call it, but they actually have a service that any orders that you submit to them, they will fulfill and they will ship out for you for a small charge. They package them really beautiful with a bow, stuff like that. So that's Miller's Professional. Millerslab.com. I'll put it in the
Yeah.
show notes. Something I found to be very interesting that you had shown me is that there is actual ADA compliance guidelines for websites, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I think something that maybe a lot of people who don't have a disability when it comes to hearing or sight or sort of any disability really, how that ends up getting affected through the web and how people interact through the web that maybe are deaf or blind or just have a hard time seeing in general. um, so what you're showing right now is it's a Medium article that breaks down the law when it comes to building a website that is accessible for all people, whether you're colorblind or you have to use a screen reader for your website. Um, this article, I think, breaks down the law really clearly and really nicely because there are all different types of levels when it comes to ADA compliance.
Right.
There's just sort of the basics, which I think everyone should do because everyone should be able to read your website. And that's stuff like making sure that your text is readable. So your contrast is nice. So like this is black text against a white background. You can read it without any issues. Making sure that your text isn't too small. So that's like a very basic level. Um, where it gets a little bit more complex, which I think everybody should consider, is making sure that your site is either navigatable through a keyboard, just purely through a keyboard, or making sure that your site can be read through a screen reader. So one of the very easy things that you can do, and WordPress makes this simple, is when you upload images to the web, there is alternative text or alt text that you can add. Not only is alt text good for SEO, and that's a whole other discussion. So alternative text, not only is it good just for the web, because like let's say I have a blog and I only post pictures of cats. And I have an orange cat and a tabby cat. And when I add alternative text to those images, when you type in orange cat into Google, that's what Google uses. They'll use the file name and then they'll use your alt text. But when it comes to ADA compliance, somebody who's using a screen reader, that's the same text that their screen reader is going to read out. So if you have, a website that's full of landscape images, that alt text is where you describe what the image looks like. So that, again, that article is really good to go through. Just give it a read. When I say it's the law, I I mean you have to make an effort to make sure that people can just use your website just in general, whether or not you have a disability. But again, there are different levels. Like if you're, I know like law firms, their websites are being highly scrutinized just in terms of who can use them, who can access them. So depending on your content, you might be liable for a different set of guidelines, but don't let it freak you out. Don't let it, scare you into seeing like whether or not your website's okay. If you're making an effort to make sure that it's clear and concise, and you're making an effort with that alternative text, you should be okay. But it's important for everybody to know you want everybody to be able to use your site.
Right. So if you're running, a 1985 Flash site, uh,
Yeah.
one Flash, you should not have a site that uses Flash, but it's very unfriendly when it
Mhm.
comes to mobile devices and ADA compliance and things like that. And laws do vary based on, yes, I'm reading in
Yeah.
Mark Shred's making a comment, like in Australia, it's very badly implemented. So it just depends on where you are. So look into that. So like you were saying.
Well, and I would add too that a good designer is going to make sure that your website is at least hitting those ADA compliance basics at the minimum.
Right, right. So we're coming towards our end. We've hit all of our bullet points. We've talked about twice as much stuff as we had in our list, which is great. Um, what information would you like to leave people with? Let's say they think, you know what, I love this website stuff. Kiera's wonderful. I don't want to do it myself. How do I get a hold of Kiera?
Yeah, so you can contact me directly through my email, Kiera@musedragon.com. We'll make sure that all that's in the show notes. Or you can just visit my website and take a peek at what I do and fill out a contact form there. It's all going to get to me. Um, when it comes to websites, they can be really daunting and they can be confusing. And I have a lot of clients that, some literally just want a place to put their images, like David Schulman's website. They want, a URL to put on their business card, and that works. And then I have other clients that want to do e-commerce and they want to sell their work. There's a lot that goes into it. I have made most of the mistakes. So if you are asking me to work with you on that, that's something that's information I can bring to the table and help with. But if you're looking to work with somebody like myself or anybody else, think about your business and who you want your website to speak to. What kind of content do you want to share? And that is really going to help drive not just your vision, but your designers or your developers' vision when it comes to, really setting up your web presence.
Right. And what would be just maybe like three or four big questions that if somebody has a designer in mind that they want to reach out to, what should they be asking, right? Like we're not designers ourselves or we're not web developers ourselves like me. What should I be asking?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, ask yourself, what is the goal of your website? So if you're trying to sell images and your goal is to sell, that's going to drive different functionality than if your goal is to showcase your work so that people can just see what you do. Those are two very distinctive examples. I know that for photographers specifically, that usually applies to. So what is your goal? And then consider who your audience is. And I know we talked about this a lot when it comes to brands, but it's important to know who you're talking to, because especially in design, if your audience, are people that are maybe, a little bit older, or, they have a very specific style, or, if you're targeting millennials versus people in corporate, like, your content's going to be different. Your design is going to be a little bit different. Um, whatever your brand is, whatever your business story is, bring that to the table when it comes to the design or whoever you're working with, because that's also going to drive a lot of your like your body copy content, like your about page, or talking about your work, or the stuff that you offer. And then I guess the last thing I would consider is make sure that you're keeping everything, whether it's your images, your goals, or just your content in general, keep it as concise as possible. I have seen a lot of bloated websites that are just full of info that either doesn't apply anymore, or images that just aren't relevant to your work anymore. Your websites are stuff that's fluid and should be relevant. And just keep it simple. People don't have big attention spans. I don't have a big attention span. So tell me what I need to know and make it easy for me to look through your site. So
Right. Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kiera, for just sharing all that information. I know that this is a topic that could go on for hours, because we didn't even dive into the deep issues of. Well, you talked a little bit about like sizing your images, but there's contact forms, there's backend databases, there's so much inventories, point of sales, all that kind of stuff. But those are things that can all be done on that platform, and it can grow with you. That's the nice thing about the WordPress format, is that it can grow with you. It sounds like we're promoting WordPress, but we chose to work in that particular platform because it is so flexible. Thank you again. I appreciate that. Everybody, thank you for putting up with us for an hour or so. I appreciate it. This was great. And I look forward to the next one. Everybody be safe and have an amazing evening.